Hello and welcome to another video. So today we're going to be taking a look at another Bloodcraft deck, this time Phantom Cat. Fairly similar to how they structure the Spawn Abyss decks, except its late game finishes are slightly different. Things like Bahamut work nicely with Phantom Cat for that extra pull if you need it, but not necessary. You can also just play it on 2 to pull it for 6. It's quite an effective play around. I've tested this deck a little bit, not as much as I'd probably like. So the games aren't going to be perfect, obviously, but I think this deck has a lot of potential. I've seen a few people starting to climb to Grandmaster with it, so I thought, why not give it a spin myself and see how I go with it. So we'll get right into that. Okay, so game 1 is against Rune. We get to go first, which is pretty fortunate with this deck. And we start off with a okay hand. The only thing that could be a potential drop would have been a Grimnir, which we do drop. Just because pulling a 2-drop would have been better, especially comboing with Alice. Grim's not bad, but against Rune I really wanted to try and curve out a little nicer. Fortunately we haven't managed to pull a 2-drop yet. And they go for the Scrap Iron Smelter. A little bit of a pain in the ass to deal with. Fortunately we do get that 3-drop in the Goblin Leader, fixing up the whole loss of a 3-drop from dropping Grimnir, and making Alice just a little bit better. Fortunately we also draw Actress, which is a nice card to play on turn 5 if you can't play anything else to combo with it. The Evolve boost on the Goblins is always quite crazy, especially if you have Alice to return before. Fortunately they have like a pretty solid board when it comes to sigils, meaning it's going to be hard for me just to remove things outright. Luckily we do have a few options. And drawing a second Alice means that playing another Alice is actually really nice. We get a triple boost, or quad boost, sorry, with the one on board. And we can use our second Alice to boost everything again. Fortunately they do go for the Time Worn though. Time Worn is a really powerful card. So we've got to deal with all that. Fortunately Big Knuckle is an amazing card when it comes to having to deal with board. Getting to remove something and then hit something before, it's always good. That's what makes Priest of the Cudgel and Dragon Warrior such good cards. So we have the Hector and the Gruff Mountaineer Captain. The Captain is okay, the rush ability is really handy, especially when you're trading into big threats. Hector is hit or miss, just depends on what kind of luck you've got. And of course we have the Alice neutral curve as always. Now they've put out 4 sigils. They're so close to bricking their board. Unfortunately we are in a situation where we actually have an okay play. Being able to just play out an Alice, play out an Actress, set up for a second Actress if we need to. Unfortunately they do return, removing our buffs. So now we can pretty much just ignore face, force them to use their own trade materials, and use our own Hector just to ping that extra 3 damage to their face early. Any damage we can get is always good. So this pretty much rounds out the game. There's nothing much they could do to that board, so we were pretty safe. So our second match is against Haven. We've been seeing a little bit of Haven lately, not too much, just a little bit. Blood still being the overly strongest class, it's just a matter of variation now. Spawn probably is still the strongest, with Phantom Cat following close up behind from what I have seen. Alright, so we see the Sacred Plea drop, the perfect turn 1 play for any any Havencraft player. We are then able to quite easily drop into a Lyriel or Skeedad. Not too bad a hand. So if we could curve out a little nicer, I would have been more happy, but unfortunately we just didn't have the cards to do that. On the other hand, we were able just to hit damage, which against Haven is pretty important in the early game. And forcing their trades really isn't too bad. And we've drawn Phantom Cat, which is just a nice bit of damage. You can go from 0 to 4 damage, so you can use it either to close out a game, do something else. It's just a nice all-round card with the double draw. Alice being pretty ideal, giving us huge boosts. Unfortunately, I never did combo Skeeter with the nice cards. I wish I had of, but I didn't really prioritize it, I guess. Like turn 7 with Gruff Mountaineer and Skeeter actually would have been a good play, or Hector and Skeeter maybe would have been a good play, but I tended to avoid those plays, so they could be a pretty big letdown overall. Unfortunately, they have a nice amount of healing and a nice amount of removal in their hand, being able to easily clear my board repeatedly, making things more and more difficult on me. So I had to try and come up with a way to do this, so I decided to go with the Hector, kill off the 3 and then leave the 3-3. Worst case, the Tribunal hits the 5-5, best it hits the 3-3, which it does. And then they just decided to wipe the board, which I thought was okay but odd, I guess. They just want to limit their damage, I suppose. So we do get another Alice off, giving us those nice gains. And we have our tiny little Goblin, which is now 2-3, and our Abs, which is a 4-4. Just building up that board, making it hard for everything to be removed, and making sure there's enough targets. So we're not looking like we're in a great position from here. With Big Knuckle, Hector and Grim, they're probably our best 3, with Mountaineer being kind of just an extra tech here to deal with their board. Ideally, we would have wanted to be able to kill them earlier. Unfortunately, Haven is really good at drawing out games, making things last super long times. The only bonus is that this Big Knuckle bodyguard was actually half decent. Being able to trade with everything we needed to trade with while setting up a ward. Plus, they haven't played their Aegis at all, which is a really huge flaw with this Haven matchup. If they had have played it earlier, I would have been pretty screwed. I feel like that's what they tried to set up for here. But I just go for the double Mountaineers. No need to overcommit, no need to undercommit, so why not? And they finally play their Aegis. With no evolve, meaning they can't trade, and I have pretty optimal board here. Being able to pull 5 damage with the evolve on the 3-5 and another 5 off the 5-7. And 4 off Grim is a total of 14 damage for this turn. So even if they had a full health, this would have been very close to finishing him off easily. So all we would need is for 1 damage to survive on board with the Grimnir, and that would be it. And they end up not having anything else, so pretty easy matchup there. And our final matchup is against Sword. Sword is a matchup that didn't really have too much trouble. The problem cards is just being the wards with the card council and things like that. They're just a little bit of a pain in the ass to deal with in the early game. Once you get past those though, it's pretty easy just to beat them in the face. That's kind of the Sword's weakness at the moment. They just don't have enough to really push them up. They've been gaining a lot of good cards, but nothing that really changed what they do, not like Blood has. While yes, Spawn is still an aggro style deck, attacking towards the neutral spectrum, it's required a lot more tinkering than generic aggro Blood has. So we've got the Bahamut, which is pretty solid, Goblin leaders and a normal Goblin. Prioritizing that we could deal with the board here. And then just flood again with our Goblins. There's nothing wrong with flooding the board. As long as you know what to expect coming into turns, and against Sword is pretty easy because you don't expect any kind of board clear. The best board clear Sword has access to is actually really bad. So we get our own actress, boosting up our entire board and trading it off. Sacrifice I was willing to make to put in that little bit of damage. We already have Bahamut, I wasn't too concerned. Luminous Knight, such a problem card no matter when you deal with it. Fortunate part about Luminous Knight though, you know exactly how to target, so as long as you can hit what you want, you're pretty right. Unfortunately, because of the way Bahamut is played in this deck, playing it for 2 is perfectly acceptable. Pulling a Phantom Cat that is 6 cost is completely fine. You're going to get the same value out of it either way. And it's a good way to say that you're baiting out spawn. So if you play Bahamut and they go, oh shit, maybe they have a spawn, it always feels good. So they look like they were prioritizing trades. Trying to deal with my board, I guess, as much as they could before getting demolished. Fortunately, with Phantom Cat in hand, we can easily just play that out if we want. Get a couple draws. Happen to be both neutrals, giving us 4 total damage, with 3 more on board. You can't ask for much better from Phantom Cat when you're drawing double neutral. Frontal Guard, one of the only problem cards when you're playing an aggro deck against Sword. It's really difficult to get through that Frontal Guard normally. Fortunately, Mountaineer makes that really easy, being able to just play it out and ram it into the 7-3. I could have also done the Big Knuckle, but I felt like this 4-6 was just a nicer way to do this. And we just ping 1 damage, why not? Make it so that if they do something, we have a slight chance of pulling victory from it. So they go for the Albert, making probably what I would consider the weirdest play with this Albert though. They decide to hit face. I suppose because they could only attack once, so they didn't want to get rid of this 4-6 like that. And because of their order of play, it made things more difficult. So I decide, let's not hit face and drop them to 1. Let's make sure that their board is done. So even another Albert coming out wouldn't hurt me. That was mainly what I was trying to do there. Making sure that I had enough on board to survive regardless of what they played. Unfortunately that all worked out. And so that will pretty much complete this video on Phantom Cat. It's a pretty strong deck for sure. If you've got the dedication to play it, it can definitely do well. I noticed the more games I had played with it, the more I was getting used to when I should play certain cards, which is true of most decks, but this deck in particular, you really want to know which cards are worth trading with things like Big Knuckle, Hectors, Mountaineers, things like that. When to play your Bahamut, whether you want to save it 5, whether you want to use it on 2. Different things like that, just little things that make all the difference in your matchups. Most people would consider something like this pretty brain dead and you just hit face. It's really not. You've got to think about how your opponent is going to play their board. While hitting face is always good, sometimes you do need to trade. You need to make sure that your health total isn't going to drop too low by the time you can set up your own lethal. Those sort of things. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, you can find the deck list in the description below along with any other important links for this video. And make sure to smack that like button and subscribe for more content, and I will catch you guys next time. See ya.